GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the new Rwanda plan is we're going to give you £3,000 to go to Rwanda and 5 years free accommodation. And if they think that's going to stop people crossing the English Channel, I don't know what planet they're on. I'm joined by the president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts. Now, they've been launching a legal action to try and find out, did Prince Harry lie on his visa forms about his drug taking? And it's Ladies' Day. Yes, it is, at Cheltenham at the festival, and yet it's no longer called Ladies' Day. No, they've decided to give it a gender-neutral term. Is nothing sacred? Before all of that, let's get the news with Sophia Wensler.
Nigel, thank you. It's 7 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Mr Hester says he's deeply sorry for the remarks. At Prime Minister's questions today, Sir Keir Starmer confronted Rishi Sunak over the remarks, pressing him to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. The Prime Minister acknowledged Frank Hester's comments were wrong and racist, but declined to say his donation would be returned.
I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
The Prime Minister speaking there. Now, migrants who've been refused asylum in Britain could be offered thousands of pounds to move to Rwanda. The voluntary scheme would be separate to the Safety of Rwanda Bill, which is facing delays due to a series of amendments. It would extend current returns policies, which sees some migrants offered £3,000 to return to their country of origin. Labour says it's evidence the government's Rwanda plan has no chance of succeeding. However, the Home Office has defended the scheme, saying voluntary returns are an important part of tackling illegal migration. A new law aimed at quashing the wrongful convictions of sub-postmasters will be introduced by the government. More than 700 post office staff were found guilty of crimes, including theft and fraud, because of a faulty IT system. Rishi Sunak says the legislation is a crucial step forward towards resolving the largest miscarriage of justice in Britain's history. Labour welcomed the progress, but says it won't be enough to deliver full justice. And the Defence Secretary has warned Vladimir Putin to stop sabre-rattling over nuclear war. It comes as the Russian president warns that any US troops who venture to Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, Putin said that while Moscow is technically prepared for nuclear war, the country is not rushing into it. Grant Shapps told GB News the only way forward for Russia is to pull out of Ukraine. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nigel.
Good evening. That Rwanda debate never ever goes away, does it? On Monday, the House of Commons will be voting again on a series of amendments that have gone through the House of Lords. The game of parliamentary ping-pong is on. But overnight, another genius idea has come from our government. Oh, yes. If you come to this country illegally and you fail your asylum claim, you are given the opportunity to voluntarily go back to your country, and we help you do it. But in some cases, let's say you've come from Syria, well, we're not going to return you there because we don't think that's safe. So the new master plan is, rather than forcibly removing you to Rwanda, we're going to pay you to go to Rwanda. Yeah, we're going to give you 3,000 quid spending money to go to Rwanda. You're going to get 5 years free accommodation. I mean, you couldn't make this up, could you? And the total cost estimated now from the Office of National Statistics is that for every single person that goes to Rwanda, if any do, the cost will be an estimated £171,000 per person that goes. But the idea that a 3,000 quid, little bit of pocket money, and 5 years free accommodation and a chance to work, the idea that that somehow will reduce the numbers coming across the English Channel is for the birds. After all, you could buy a very, very cheap little kayak or kiddie dinghy in one of the main supermarkets around Calais or Boulogne, and on a nice day in June or July, row across the Channel, say you come from Syria or somewhere like that, and you get £3,000 every time you do it. I think, if anything, it might actually encourage more people to cross the English Channel. I think they are in absolutely dire straits with all of this. I've never thought the Rwanda plan was going to work, but I'd love to know what you think. Maybe you think I'm wrong. You tell me, will this work? Farage at gbnews.com. Ivan Sampson, immigration lawyer and friend of this programme, who himself has expressed quite a lot of reservations about the Rwanda scheme over time, although, you know, in principle, any deterrent would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Indeed. And voluntary returns is nothing new, Nigel.
No.
It's been around for a decade.
Yeah.
The difference here is that they're not going back to their own country, they're going to a third party. Now, Israel ran such a scheme in 2014, sending people from Eritrea and Sudan to Rwanda, paying them to go back there. And what the government's thinking is this, that if you voluntarily go back, you can't then challenge the decision of the Supreme Court that it's not safe. You can't do a Rule 39 injunction. So
because it's voluntary.
Because it's voluntary. So that way you can't say it breaches my human rights, you know, because you're going back voluntarily. And that's the thinking behind it. What they haven't told us is how much Rwanda's getting paid. We know that each person will get 3,000, but how much is the government paying Rwanda, as well as the cost of the accommodation and so forth? So, and also, how many people will actually take the scheme up to make it worthwhile? How many can Rwanda take? It's not going to have an impact on the small boats.
This is one of the problems, isn't it? That, you know, the talk from Rwanda was hundreds of people. It wasn't 5,000 people. It
500 is the amount that's been battered down. That's not going to make a dent in the numbers coming across on the small boats, from 26,000 up to 45,000, probably about 30,000 maybe this year. So it's not going to have any impact whatsoever. What the government needs to do is secure our borders. We're an island. Please. If we were a land border, I can understand, like Mexico and US, but we're an island. We should be able to secure these stretch of waters to prevent people from entering irregularly.
Well, I think if we had the political will, we could do it. But one last point on this 3,000 quid idea. See, I think that could add as a further pull factor for people to cross the Channel.
Possibly, but the data will bear that out. I mean, would people travel right across several countries to get here for £3,000 to go to Rwanda? I'm not sure.
No.
And then go back again and do it again? I'm not sure.
But it's actually a good backstop, isn't it?
It is.
If you come here and it all goes wrong and you fail your asylum, I mean, most of them pass the asylum claims, but you fail the asylum claim, if the worst case scenario is you're given 3,000 quid and a chance to live for free and work in Rwanda, it's not all bad, is it?
Well, it's a payback. I mean, the traffickers charging tens of thousands of dollars for bringing people over. So
Yeah, that depends, Ivan. That depends. I mean, yes, on, boats with decent engines. In the case of many of the Africans who haven't, and I've seen this myself in the channel, who've got no money at all. They're coming over in €50 worth of kayak.
Yes, and they haven't paid anyone. They just basically
haven't paid anyone. Yeah. And the tragedy that we saw last week with a 7-year-old girl dying, that was a group of people who'd stolen a boat.
Yeah. Look, I agree. It could be a pull factor. We need to secure our borders, Nigel. We need to know who's coming across, where they come from. They could be terrorists coming across. We've had this conversation before.
I know.
And we don't know who they are. Could be Hamas terrorists for we know. So we need to secure our borders. This government is not doing it.
And we've seen some horrendous examples, haven't we? I mean, the Clapham alkali attacker, somebody who'd come here illegally. We last night discussed the droves of people who claim to be turning to Christianity. But how do we stop people in the middle of the English Channel, Ivan?
We need investment, technology. We need more border force officers. But the biggest thing that we can do is have a deal with the EU. Look, if we had a deal to return people back to France, unless they go through proper routes, after 100, who would cross the Channel when you know that you're going to be sent back? No one's going to do it.
And certainly he would pay a trafficker,
which
is a very, very good point.
Indeed.
Well, joining me also to discuss this subject is Professor Azim Ibrahim, OBE, author and academic, and somebody else, of course, who has appeared on this programme. So, Azim, tell me, do you think this could help?
Well, Nigel, this scheme at the moment is basically just a stopgap until the full Rwanda bill comes to fruition, and the UK government can then start deporting people and enforce the actual immigration policy. So this is just a temporary, I believe, and extension of what the current scheme is, of asking people to voluntarily return. And this has worked effectively in the past. We've had about 19,000 people returned in such a way. And this is aimed at those principally that are coming from countries which the UK does not have a relationship with. The UK does not have direct flights with. Afghanistan, for example, the Taliban government, with Syria, etc. But this is not a permanent solution in any shape or form. And this is why we need the Rwanda bill to get through Parliament as quickly as possible so we can start enforcing that in a more viable fashion.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of those commentators who's quite bullish in some ways about this Rwanda plan. But let's say that after the game of parliamentary ping-pong has finished, and Monday will be a big part of that, that we do get some legislation in place. What is to stop the ECHR, through the Human Rights Act and legal challenges, rendering this completely unworkable?
Well, the bill is designed at the moment to make sure that we surpass that. The bill is a treaty and a bill with Rwanda. And I have looked at immigration policies throughout Europe of every country. No country has been able to get this right. And the fact of the matter is, I firmly believe that the Rwanda bill is the only thing that's going to work, is the only thing that's going to deter migrants from coming to the UK. If they know that as soon as they land, there'll be a bus waiting for them. That bus will take them to Gatwick Airport, and there'll be a plane waiting to take them to Rwanda. I believe you only need to do this for a month or so. And I think the people smugglers, the business will dry up and people will be deterred from coming here. I firmly believe this is the only thing that's going to work.
I agree with that, if that's what were to happen. But I'm going to return to immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan, what Azim's, if that worked, it would be a deterrent. He's quite right. It wouldn't take a month. A fortnight would be enough.
It's not going to work.
But it's not going to work, is it?
It's not going to work. Firstly, the Supreme Court has said the policy is lawful, but Rwanda isn't. The Joint Committee on Human Rights of Parliament said Rwanda's not safe. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the UNCHR, the government, there's a moral obligation not to send people to a country that's not safe. Even this current £3,000 scheme, there's a moral aspect to this. They're inviting people to go to a country which we all know not to be safe. Look, we had this conversation over the last year, and I've told not one single person is going to be removed to Rwanda. Why? Because it breaches the Refugee Convention. It breaches Article 8 of the European Convention. And also the Clause 4, which says that you can appeal. Well, you can't. You can only appeal on very limited grounds. On top of that, the minister can overrule that and prevent any interim measures. That's a breach of the European Convention. It will never fly. Not a single person is going to be sent to Rwanda.
So I come back, Azim, to you on this, if you're still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ivan's saying, look, we've signed up to the UN Convention, we're signed up to the ECHR, we have the Human Rights Act in this country, we have a judiciary who will interpret that as they choose. Azim, the point that's being made is great idea that it is, great and I get it. I completely get why they've been trying to do this, but it just isn't going to fly unless we change those international obligations, which I think the government is very loath to do.
Yeah, I'm not certain of that. I think the Supreme Court decision was on refoulement, and I myself have actually been to Rwanda. I've actually seen the accommodation. I spent some time there. It's a perfectly safe country by any measure. And I think the actual idea of, moving asylum seekers to Rwanda is actually a great idea, not just for Rwanda, but for the UK as well. This is an opportunity for them to participate in a growing economy, in a safe growing economy, and build a life for themselves. I think the policy is workable, and I firmly believe that this is actually the only policy that's going to work.
All right, well, let me put it to you. Do you think that between now and the general election, there will be plane loads, maybe several plane loads of people who've, say, crossed the channel going to Rwanda? Do you think this will happen this side of a general election?
Well, I can't comment whether it's going to be plane loads or not, but I do think the policy will be initiated before the side of a general election. I do think we'll start seeing the policy in action, and then it's just a question of ramping it up and to make sure it acts as a deterrent for anybody that's deciding to come to the UK through these illegal means.
Azim, Ibrahim, thank you very much indeed for joining me on GB News. And final word goes to Ivan. Ivan, it could just be that a government in very deep trouble, and very deep trouble with this policy, just says the hell with international law, the hell with the courts. We're going to send some plane loads the week before the election.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. I don't believe that. What the government might do is in their manifesto is promise to come out the ECHR.
Yeah.
You might see that coming.
Yeah.
I just want to comment on what Professor Azim said about Rwanda's safe.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him stand in Rwanda with a placard which said, Paul Kagame out. Because he'd be in prison within a heartbeat. So I'm afraid it isn't safe. It's safe when they invite you and they want to show you the good parts. But the Supreme Court's judgment clearly states that Rwanda is not a safe country.
Well, if you go to a home game at the Arsenal, visit Rwanda as one of their main sponsors. And it looks wonderful. But I haven't been. Maybe one day we'll go. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for that debate. Looking for your thoughts. Do you think this will work? You had two very different views there. In a moment, I'm joined by Kevin Roberts. He is president of the Heritage Foundation, a very, very large conservative think tank based in Washington, D.C. He also had a very interesting speech to our friends at the World Economic Forum just recently, but interestingly, he's been trying legal means to find out what did Prince Harry put on his visa form. Did he tell the truth about his drug taking?
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like anyone who talks about, anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... I mean, this is
she's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also, even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't,
will they?
they
Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Come to Britain illegally, we'll give you £3,000, 5 years free accommodation in Rwanda, and you can work there and earn money too. Is that policy going to work? Some of your thoughts. Angela says this will just encourage the revolving door to swing faster. Come in a dinghy, get £3,000, flown to Rwanda, rinse and repeat. You are so cynical, Angela, but I think you may well be right. Laurie says, why would someone who has spent thousands of pounds with people traffickers to get here illegally be persuaded by £3,000 to leave? Laurie, they wouldn't. But the point that I made was, yes, you get people going through the traffickers, but equally, you tend to get people without money coming in the most unseaworthy vessels you can even believe. I was involved in a rescue of 2 Africans a few years ago. I wonder actually how many people have disappeared into the English Channel that we simply don't even know about. So there are some that don't pay a penny to come because they just either buy a very cheap boat or they nick one. Right, now, I get so many emails from you guys about the WEF. Why don't you talk more about the WEF? Well, somebody that did talk at Davos, and I never get invited, obviously, but someone that did talk at Davos was the president of the Heritage Foundation. His name is Kevin Roberts. And here he was, in action at Davos.
Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y. Take immigration. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. They're right. Elites also tell us that public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you that the lack of public safety damages not just the American way of life, but their life. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change, so much so that climate alarmism is probably the greatest cause for mental health crisis in the world. The solutions, the average person know, based on climate change are far worse and more harmful and cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves.
Well, that was Kevin Roberts at Davos, World Economic Forum sponsored event. He was the heretic in the room. Reminds me a bit of my time in the European Parliament, and Kevin joins me in the studio. Welcome. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. How did that go down at Davos?
Well, as you would imagine, the people in the audience were aghast. And in fact, I had someone say, you know, you must have channeled your inner Nigel Farage. Well, of course I did. What better person would there be? But the good news is people around the world, not because of what the fact that I said it, but the fact that the message was right, have really been galvanized by that. And it's good news. I think even, here in the UK, where you have a tough election cycle, there are many places around the world where people have stood up and said, we're going to stand up for sovereignty, we're going to stand up for our freedom, we're going to stand up for common sense governance. And so in the long view, Nigel, I actually think the response to that WEF message is one that really has caused people to say, we're going to stand up for our rights.
Yeah, no, and we are seeing, in fact, quite a move, aren't we? The centre of gravity of debate amongst folk in Western countries has changed significantly over the last 18 months. And indeed, we're seeing many more conservative-minded parties doing well. We've got a few problems in this country at the moment, but we'll skip over that for now. Now, you nasty people at the Heritage Foundation.
That's us.
You're going after the adored Prince Harry, and you're actually going as far as to seek, legal means to find out whether... So the question is, did he lie on the visa form, or was the book a complete fabrication?
It's one or the other. And I'll just say from this American friend who loves the United Kingdom and is grateful to it, and to all of you, this has nothing to do with sort of American hostility to the monarchy. We settled that question a long time ago.
The Americans are jealous of our monarchy, aren't they?
Some Americans are. In fact, I'm married to an American who's jealous of your monarchy. All of that to say...
And the Queen, of course, we just adore.
Oh, my gosh, what an icon for actually these very things we're talking about.
And fun of Harry, 10 years ago, was, I think, the most popular royal.
He was?
Almost I'd ever seen. I mean, teenagers thought the monarchy was cool. And then he met Meghan and things changed.
So blame the American.
Well, we did have an American divorcee in the 1930s, caused a few problems and led to an application. So we've seen the, touche on the history side of it. But so I think what you're saying, clearly, even though I'm sure the book did contain fabrications, the fact that he took a succession of illegal drugs has not been a secret at all. Everyone knew this anyway. So do we assume, OK, if I go into America and I write down on the visa form that I've been a regular drug user, I will be refused, won't I?
Yes, particularly if you do.
Well, quite, yeah.
But that's just the point, is that in the United States, we believe that everyone must be treated equally. It has nothing to do with someone's title. And so one of two things is true, and either of these would be a problem. We're going to find out in the next few weeks, Nigel, which of these it is. Either he lied, and the American government let him get away with that and didn't turn him around, which is what they would do to every other migrant. Keep in mind, we have 10 million illegal aliens who've come into this country during this period. Or he told the truth, and he would be turned around, or at least delayed long enough to figure out about the drug use.
Is it possible? Sources close to Harry say he told the truth on the visa form. That can mean whatever you want it to mean. Is it possible that he did tell the truth and was given an exemption because of who he is?
There is no doubt in my mind that if, in fact, it is true that, as his associate said, that he told the truth, that he was given preferential treatment because of who he is, and also because of who the American administration happens to be.
Which raises a very interesting question. If, let's say, a Republican president was to win the election on November the 5th, he could reopen this, couldn't he?
He sure could, and that is a very exciting prospect, isn't it?
You're being a bit vindictive.
No, we're being just.
OK, fair enough. Well, you've certainly been pursuing this, very, very strongly indeed. Now, a really interesting development, folks, that happened just a couple of hours ago, and it's this. It's that the US House of Representatives has overwhelmingly passed a bill to force ByteDance, who are the company that own the majority stake in TikTok, to divest of the shareholding or face a ban 6 months from now. Bear in mind that 170 million Americans are on TikTok. Now, I understand, Kevin, that you again, Heritage have been heavily involved in this.
We have been, and our problem is not with TikTok per se, and certainly not with the advantage that TikTok presents us. You yourself use TikTok with great effectiveness to reach a younger audience. Those of us with our particular political beliefs need to do a better job of that. Our problem is with the following. The Chinese Communist Party has a controlling interest in TikTok, and it is an open and shut factual case that anyone who downloads TikTok therefore has given all of the personal data on that device, that cell phone, to the Chinese Communist Party. Considering, Nigel, that we at Heritage believe the CCP is the greatest adversary facing the United States, the United Kingdom, free people the world over, we have to draw a line in the sand. And so we're hopeful hopeful that with the House passing this today and the Senate hopefully taking this up soon, that this is a shot over the bow, not over TikTok or someone who enjoys using that particular social media channel, but instead it is a shot over the bow of the Chinese Communist Party. We need to do a much better job, particularly we in the UK and the United States, of drawing a line in the sand against the Chinese. Otherwise, they are going to take over Western civilization.
So basically, they have to sell their shares, or a majority stake of their shares, or a compromise gets reached somewhere. But if a compromise gets reached, how can we make sure the tech still isn't stealing data? Very difficult, isn't it?
That is much more difficult, but I have, and I mean this without being flippant at all, I have great faith in American technology innovation, in British technology innovation, that not only can we get the free market side of this right, the acquisition is easy enough, right? But the more complicated part of this, with this guidance offered by our Congress, is essential. And I believe that can be resolved.
Well, I hope that's right, because there's an awful lot of young people in Britain and America and elsewhere that they live on TikTok, you know. Now, a TikTok spokesman has said this process was secret and the bill was jammed through for one reason. It's a ban. That's what they said after the vote. And they hope the Senate will consider the facts, listen to their constituents when considering the bill. This is going to be a very, very important fight. I can't even imagine the amount of lobbying senators are going to get, actually, particularly from young people saying, please, please, don't take TikTok away from us. And for a majority of young people, it is through TikTok they're now forming their opinions, which is why this debate, Kevin, is so vital, so crucial. If we can get it right, it'll be good for everybody. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, we're going to see if President Trump becomes the next president, what will happen to Prince Harry. It's almost irresistible, isn't it? In a moment, we're going to talk about the sub-postmasters. Perhaps the greatest ever mass conviction of people wrongfully in the history of the British legal system. At last, the government appears to be putting forward legislation that will give them all a pass. I've no doubt one or two people were guilty, but it'll be a good thing for everybody else. At least I think so.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Tomorrow, most of us will see some rain. It's going to be another very mild day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Today, we've had this weather front straddling the country. It's been providing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some very windy conditions across northern Scotland. They'll slowly ease through the night, as will the showers. But this zone of damp weather will persist, staying pretty soggy over North Wales, northwest England. The rain just creeping back across Northern Ireland and eventually into southern Scotland by dawn. Much of the south and east of England staying dry, very mild here, 9 or 10 the low in towns and cities. Colder across Scotland, a touch of frost possible in the countryside here, but we should start with some sunshine. Still a few showers over the Northern Isles. Rain spreading quickly through the central belt. A wet morning for Northern Ireland. That rain slowly pushes northwards. A few showers over northern England, some heavy showers for Wales and southwest England through the middle of the day. A few getting further east, but much of eastern England, I suspect, will stay dry. And with some sunshine here, we could reach 17, maybe 18 Celsius. A very mild day here, but feeling colder with the wet weather across Scotland. Some snow over the hills. That's still around on Friday morning, but slowly it should start to pull away, and then we're left with bright spells and showers for many. Still quite breezy, and notice the winds coming down from the north across northern Scotland, so a real chill here with temperatures only 6 or 7 Celsius. Again, no further south, pretty mild for the time of year, 15 or 16 degrees.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
It is said by many to be the greatest miscarriage of justice in our history. The hundreds of sub-postmasters who were found to be criminals when, in fact, they weren't. Well, the government is going to put forward a bill, a piece of legislation that would actually clear them and pave the way to some fast-track compensation. Now, normally, when we get Professor Daniel Hodgson on, we get him on to talk about banking, because he had a very senior role in that, but also, he was also the former non-executive director of the Post Office and chair of the Post Office Audit Commission. It's very, very good, Daniel, to get you on the show on this subject. I mean, what has happened to hundreds of innocent people is truly appalling, isn't it?
It is. It's frightening, and it's a massive failure of governance, I think, in the Post Office. My role ended in 1995, but I did chair the audit committees, as you said, Nigel.
Yeah.
And in those days, we looked very, very closely at all consultancy contracts, and we also and value for money and all that kind of thing. And we also looked very closely at litigation, what litigation the Post Office was carrying out. And I have to say, in this case, I wish that back in the late 90s and early 2000s, they'd actually taken a reality check. Because if you look at the numbers now, if you look at the fact that 900 people or 900 businesses were actually taken on out of 11,500, and think of what a percentage that is, and how many people in reality in these relatively small businesses were likely to be dishonest, then you have to say they did not pass that reality check.
No, that's perfectly clear. Now, it does appear the government is really going to take a step to put this right, yeah?
What it does look like, and this great piece of legislation, which I believe is called the PO Horizon Systems Offences Bill, really does cover the tracks as far as one can see. It deals with every aspect of the people who've been affected by this thing, but not before time. Some of these people, and we know that I think, 236 people were in prison. I think there were 4 suicides and many, many more cases of personal discomfort and terrible things happening. And look, these are small businesses. These are people who serve rural communities. These are people who are beloved in their neighborhoods. And most of them, the vast majority of them, do a wonderful service and actually support our communities.
One last quick point, if I may, on this, Daniel. Isn't it odd that government didn't get involved in this earlier, given that MPs were receiving letters from people saying, please help?
Well, I think, as I said before earlier, Nigel, I think that it was a massive governance failure. And I actually believe, and what I would have hoped to have happened, is that the audit committee would have rung the bell with the board, and the board would have rung the bell with the government going back some time. They had plenty of moments to reconsider this in the early stages, and when it became, and the odd thing is that the actual bits of the system which appear to be wrong were fairly obvious. I mean, there were things like cash machines, there were things like tax discs, there were things like lottery payments, which is basic post office business. So, yes, I think the government, but I think that the board, it should be done. I mean, in normal circumstances, under corporate circumstances, it would come through the board, and they would have raised it with the shareholder, who's the government.
No, a lot of people asleep at the wheel. Daniel, as ever, thank you for joining us here on the Farage Show on GB News. Now, some news out today, which is foreign state ownership of UK newspapers will be banned. And this, of course, is all about the UAE Telegraph takeover bid. I'm very pleased to be joined by Tim Stanley, Telegraph columnist and leader writer. Tim, it's been extraordinary to watch journalists who've spent, in some cases, their whole career at the Telegraph, openly saying, we do not want these people taking us over. I would think it's a day of celebration for you, isn't it?
It really is. Of course, it's conditional. We'll see what the legislation looks like. And it's also possible that Redbird IMI, which UAE is attached to, could restructure its bid in the future. But don't get me wrong, right now we're very happy. You're quite right. It's been really striking how journalists have put their careers on the line at the Telegraph to say, I don't want to be taken over by the UAE. And some have openly said, I won't work for the Telegraph anymore if they are. At the same time, I'm really proud of the way the Telegraph has covered the bid because it's done so very objectively. We've allowed the UAE and Redbird to make their case. We just disagree with it.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, Tim, we don't see many principled people in public life, or hardly any in politics. And yes, to see very senior people at the Telegraph saying, if this goes through, that's it, I'm off, regardless whether I've got another, safe haven to go to, has been a remarkable thing to watch. And yet, Tim Stanley, here's the extraordinary thing. It seems to me that it was the Labour Party that acted first, that pushed the government into doing something it didn't really want to do. And you could, if you were very cynical, argue that one or two people, like, for example, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, perhaps have been rather pro the UAE in lots and lots of different ways.
Well, some elite Tories actually supported the bid. And so you're quite right in that sense. But I think Labour saw that this is a question of strategic interest and of free speech. Viewers might be wondering what the fuss is. What does it matter if some foreigners buy a British newspaper? Well, the point is that this wasn't a normal sale. This wasn't like an auction. It was our previous owners had some financial difficulties. Yeah. And the UAE stepped in with a loan and said that as part of that loan, we'll take control of the Telegraph and the Spectator. They would have controlled up to 75% of the stake. And what that amounted to was a foreign government owning a British newspaper. And that was the problem. Not that it was foreigners doing it, but that it was a foreign government. Yeah. If you allow that to go through, in principle, in the future, what happens if China tries to make that move? Well, whether you're left-wing or right-wing, Labour or Tory, you can't allow a great British newspaper to be bought out by a foreign government in that way.
No, and a free press has to be free of government control. Otherwise, it simply isn't free press. Tim Stanley, thank you for joining us. And I've got to say, Tim, your writing is getting funnier and funnier and funnier. Keep going. I'm loving it. Thank you for joining us here this evening. Somebody else that might be pleased is Sir Paul Marshall, who, of course, is a significant shareholder in GB News. And he, together with a big, very well-known American businessman, is also very keen on bidding for the Telegraph, as indeed we're told are Rupert Murdoch and Lord Rothermere from the Daily Mail group. We'll see what happens. My What the Farage moment today has to be, I really couldn't believe it. When this government came to power in 2010, there were 1.56 million people working for the National Health Service. We learnt overnight that number is now through 2 million. Yes, there are more than 2 million people working for the NHS. We spent, when they came to power, about 7 to 8% of our annual gross domestic product on health in one way or another. We now spend more than 10%. That's a massive 25 to 30% increase on what we spend in real terms on the NHS. So a lot more money, a lot more people, and yet I'll have a bet that most of you think the service is far worse than it was in 2010. Something is fundamentally wrong, and no one really has got the courage to face up to it. Now, it's Cheltenham week this week. I'm very excited. I'm going on Friday. I expect to have lots and lots of winning bets. But the Wednesday of Cheltenham week is rather wonderful. And like Ascot and many other of these race meetings, they have a ladies' day. And it's a great day. And the ladies all dress up and everyone's terribly nice to them. And the photographers have a great time. And this has been going on for about 200 years. But oh no, we can't have that in modern Britain. No, today at Cheltenham, it was Style Wednesday, which includes men and women. Is nothing sacred?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink. in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the
Just
fence.
chilling, just relaxing. There were two, there were in fact 2 Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, 2 people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these 2, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle. And you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's Cheltenham week, which is really, effectively, the Olympics of jump racing in this country. I mean, the other very well-known race is the Grand National, which will be run at Aintree on the 13th of April. But Cheltenham is day after day of racing. Thousands of people come across from Ireland. Over 250,000 people attend the Cheltenham Festival, and the biggest race of a lot is the Gold Cup, which will take place this Friday, and I'll be there. I know the winner already. It's wonderful. Now, all of these big events have a ladies' day. Some people say that it's classist because it's only those with the money to spend that can turn up wearing the best hats and the best outfits. But actually, it isn't about money. It's, you can use ingenuity, but it's always been such a fun thing. And it's said that this really all began with a very young Queen Victoria turning up to Ascot and wearing a bonny hat. And somehow the craze began for Ladies' Days. I don't think it's demeaning or insulting in any way at all. In fact, quite the opposite. It's the day when it's the women that matter more than anybody else. But this, of course, just won't do, will it? No, we can't have fun in modern Britain. That's ridiculous. No, it's been rebranded Style Wednesday, with some sort of green theme around it, that if you can, find some clothes in a charity shop, somehow that makes you a better person. I think it's all crackers, and I'm joined by TV personality and occasional keen racegoer Lizzie Cundy, and Amy Ansell comes back on the programme, star, of course, of The Apprentice. Now, Lizzie, you love Royal Ascot, you like Cheltenham.
I love them. I love them all, Nige.
Yeah.
And I don't always win, but I don't go for putting the bets on. I go for the fun, the fashion, and getting an amazing hat, and just having a really good time.
Have a look at this on your screen.
Wow. that big enough for you?
So you just love this, don't you?
I absolutely adore it. I go with my girlfriends every year. We get together, and we particularly love Ladies' Day, and I feel really upset about this. I really do. I didn't think I'd feel quite as angry about it, to be honest, and I think it's time for us to really rein in the woke brigade. I mean, why are we being...
That's how you see this,
That's how I see this. We are being dictated by this woke nonsense, and I really find it so frustrating. I know many girlfriends of mine are deciding not to go because of this.
Really?
Yeah, they're that upset,
Really?
Nigel. Because how is it demeaning? How is it demeaning to women? And why can't we celebrate women?
Some would say it's objectification.
Oh, really?
And I wouldn't.
You know, why aren't we allowed to celebrate women? Sadly, we're probably going to have a Prime Minister that can't even answer the question, what is a woman? That's what worries me.
I knew she'd get political. I knew it wouldn't take very long, but I get the point. Amy, I know that you've not been to Royal Ascot.
Not yet.
And you've not, but you will, because it's a wonderful thing. And Cheltenham equally, the weather's not quite as good, but it is a wonderful social event. And do you get the point about Ladies' Day being this wonderful thing?
I totally get the point. And here's the thing. Lizzie can still dress that way, look fabulous, like we just saw in all the years she's gone. But basically, in my eyes, it's just modernizing the name. It's simply modernizing the name. It's not taking anything away from women or ladies. It's simply calling it something different and being more inclusive, which is just modernizing and keeping up with the times.
How's it being more inclusive? Well, because it includes men now.
Well, it always included men, but it's making a statement by claiming that men can compete. There's a new style award that's going to happen, or that did happen. But I just feel that we have to continue to evolve as a society. I mean, I was thinking about this. Think about paternity leave. 20 years ago, it didn't exist.
I know.
And now it does, and it should have 20 years ago, but we have to keep on evolving.
I'm pretty sceptical about that.
I think it's important.
I think most men are utterly useless with newborns, but there you are.
I won't comment on that one. The point is that you have to keep on evolving and modernizing with the times.
We are an old country.
I appreciate that. Right? I live here now, 15 years.
And we have things that are called traditions.
Yes.
And I happen to think that a tradition started by... It's funny, isn't it? Our best monarchs are nearly always women. But, you know, Queen Victoria, I think a tradition that dates back to Queen Victoria, a tradition that says, on this day, it's the ladies that are centre of attention.
But Nigel, they still will be.
No, not in the same way.
Men in morning coats versus women in their gorgeous hats and fascinators and dresses will still be the star of the show.
The reason that men wear, you know, dinner jackets or wear the tails and striped trousers for Ascot or whatever, it was done deliberately so that women could shine. Men would all be dressed to a certain standard, and it was done, particularly with the dinner jacket. So men would all look the same so that women could star, women could shine. We shouldn't turn our backs on that, surely.
It's been going for centuries.
They still will
Can I
star
tell
and
you?
shine, in my
My
opinion.
great-grandmother used to go to the races. My nana, my mother, myself, we loved Ladies' Days. Why are we changing and fiddling about with our traditions? I mean, leave the jumping to the jockeys and the horses, but don't jump to the demands of this woke rubbish.
Amy says it won't be any different. But I think it will.
Of course it will, Nigel. Of course it will. It's called Ladies' Day. We've only ever known it as Ladies' Day.
But there's not going to be no Ladies' Days anymore. There's going to be Ladies' Day at other race courses, obviously.
Oh, no.
Just not Cheltenham.
No. If Cheltenham gets
Grand
rid of
National,
it...
Epsom...
Now, hang on. If something like the Cheltenham Festival, which is very traditional, and the folk that go, many of them are also very traditional, jump racing in some ways, more traditional folk than flat racing, I would argue. And certainly more country-type folk. Once it goes at Cheltenham, it'll probably go everywhere, won't it?
Not necessarily.
But you'd like to get rid of it?
Well, I'm okay with it being in certain places, but, you know, evolution happens slowly and surely, little by little, but it doesn't have to be absolute. So if it's in a few different ones, that's great. I think it's going to make a statement, and that's important. I mean, just think about the fact that until the 70s, there were no female jockeys, and now there are, and that's fantastic. And they raised it. I know, so we have to keep on moving forward, Nigel.
The point is, this was a special day. Everyone knew it was Ladies' Day. And now it's a nothing.
It's called Style Wednesday.
How dull! How Puritan! How
What
ghastly!
worries me, Nigel, we're slowly erasing women. We're slowly
Not at all.
doing this. Yes,
No,
we are
don't
in
be
many
silly.
aspects.
And you
sport.
think that more broadly in the gender debates?
I totally do. I totally do, Nigel. And sadly, with a Labour government, we're going to get more of this woke nonsense. Let's stop horsing around with our British values and traditions, excuse the pun, and leave it alone. We all love Ladies' Day. All my friends love Ladies' Day.
And
you
they
know
still
what?
can. They just can call it something
A lot of my
else.
friends won't be going because of this, and it
Well,
does mean
then
a
it's
lot.
their loss.
But you can talk
sadly.
if you want. You can talk if you want, Lizzie, about, you know, a Labour government coming in and what they may do. Think how woke we've become under a Conservative government.
Well, yes, indeed, Nigel. And sadly, the Conservatives stopped being Conservatives. They're more like the That's why they're not doing well. They're like the Liberals.
Yeah.
And they lost what really Conservative meant. And this is just, as I said, woke nonsense.
It's modernism.
We're
Yeah,
bowing
modernism.
to the
That's what I
demands and
call it.
whims
Yeah.
of
I'm
this
sorry you feel
woke
that way.
brigade. It's not just me. Many
your
out
friends.
there.
But then they're missing out
I
if they don't
promise
go.
you will look and see how many women are so upset with this. And
Well,
I'm upset.
They could still go and look
And
fabulous.
to me, it will
And
always be
also,
Ladies' Day.
This is
about
really
being more green. I
this
think
is
that's
tradition
fantastic.
against modernisation for the sake of it. It's about women being a little bit less special, in my view. Now, Cheltenham say, here we go, it's Style Wednesday Day is to encourage punters to reuse their outfits and be more sustainable.
Brilliant! That's fantastic!
It just gets worse. It just
They're
gets
saying
worse.
fast horses, slow fashion. I mean, it's
Sorry,
so
I will not be saddled with this nonsense. I will not be saddled with it. No.
Oh dear. Well, I want to say a huge thank you, Lizzie, and I may see you on Friday at
May see you
Cheltenham.
Friday.
Yeah, just wear something ridiculously
Of course
extravagant,
I will.
please.
Friday could be Ladies' Day.
And Amy, you know, I'll see you at the soup kitchen round the corner with all the Puritans or something like that. And we're pretty much out of time. Now, the weather at Cheltenham yesterday was absolutely ghastly, but it's getting better and better. I think so. So before Jacob Rees-Mogg, let's get the weather for Cheltenham from Alex Deakin.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Tomorrow, most of us will see some rain. It's going to be another very mild day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Today, we've had this weather front straddling the country. It's been providing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some very windy conditions across northern Scotland. They'll slowly ease through the night, as will the showers. But this zone of damp weather will persist, staying pretty soggy over North Wales, northwest England. The rain just creeping back across Northern Ireland and eventually into southern Scotland by dawn. Much of the south and east of England staying dry, very mild here, 9 or 10 the low in towns and cities. Colder across Scotland, a touch of frost possible in the countryside here, but we should start with some sunshine. Still a few showers over the Northern Isles. Rain spreading quickly through the central belt. A wet morning for Northern Ireland. That rain slowly pushes northwards. A few showers over northern England, some heavy showers for Wales and southwest England through the middle of the day. A few getting further east, but much of eastern England, I suspect, will stay dry. And with some sunshine here, we could reach 17, maybe 18 Celsius. A very mild day here, but feeling colder with the wet weather across Scotland. Some snow over the hills. That's still around on Friday morning, but slowly it should start to pull away. And then we're left with bright spells and showers for many. Still quite breezy, and notice the winds coming down from the north across northern Scotland. So a real chill here with temperatures only 6 or 7 Celsius. Again, no further south, pretty mild for the time of year, 15 or 16 degrees.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner?
You've won £18,000.
Oh, flipping heck. I don't know what to say.
Enter our massive spring giveaway with 3 big seasonal prizes to be won. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, Text GB Win to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at GB News.